Hello and welcome to Nat Chat. I'm Mirella Rich. Today our guest is Katie Lindorf, who has 5 children and she is Catholic homeschooling all of those children. And she's here to tell us her experience and their age from 6 to 14. Or just turning 6, is it?
Yes. Just turned 6.
Just turned 6.
Yep.
Well, welcome to the program, Katie.
Thank you.
And can you tell us about your experience with homeschooling? How come you decided to homeschool your children?
Well, I started homeschooling as a student because my parents took me out of school and schooled me from year 8 to year 12. And so when the time came, it was a pretty straightforward decision to start homeschooling my kids.
And why did your parents homeschool you?
They took me out of school because during year 7 they were concerned of some of the teaching, the religious teaching that I was receiving, and they went and spoke to the teachers about where they thought they were wrong doctrinally, and the teachers wouldn't budge, so they felt they had no option but to take me out of school.
Oh, wow. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I've heard another mum was telling me the same thing, that she heard her teacher was telling the children that, you know, in the Catholic Church we believe Jesus is in the Eucharist, he really is in the Eucharist, and the teacher was saying something like, oh no, it's not, Jesus is not in the Eucharist, it's just a metaphor. Right. And so she literally took her out of school for that, because she said, no, I'm not wasting my time in it with teachers who aren't going to teach them the correct Catholic faith.
Well, you do have to wonder if they're going to alter certain teachings there, what other teachings are they not following?
Yeah.
You want those teachers to be an excellent example for your children.
Yeah. And do you find it hard work homeschooling 5 of them, because they're age 6 to 14?
Not particularly, because I don't really consider myself a teacher as such as a supervisor. I tend to supervise their curriculum, make sure that they're doing enough work, and not so much teach. They actually do the teaching themselves by reading and filling in the answers and learning.
Right. And so the first thing, like we were talking off camera, you were saying the most important thing is to teach them to read, because then they can read anything, they can learn anything. Yep. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we found with all our kids, if you teach them to read, after that they can teach themselves. And my husband and I have found that in our own lives, in that, you know, we've built our own house and we did absolutely everything, and neither of us are builders, and we've never built before, and yet we did it all from reading.
So what, you literally built brick upon brick?
Yes,
you built your whole
literally
house?
Brick upon brick. My husband took 18 months off work, and we did 18 months full-time building while raising the kids as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your husband was homeschooled as well, wasn't he?
He was, years 10, 11 and 12.
Gee.
Which is interesting, because lots of people take the kids who homeschool their kids will put them back in for those years so that the kids can get VCE and enter scores.
Right. And so how did your husband go with, and you, how did you go with your scores and your subjects?
Yeah, well, both of us did the SAT test, which is an American test, which will, the score that you get from that will convert into an enter score.
Right.
The way that my husband actually got into university was through an interview. It's called alternative entry.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, he actually went in, interview, showed them his projects that he'd been working on, because being homeschooled he had the extra time to work on projects that he'd like to do. And yeah, they
And what did he
accepted
study?
him. Electronic engineering.
Okay. And did you study anything after you finished your
I
first
did
year?
a year of TAFE, and I was doing information technology.
Right, okay.
And then I was offered a job, and I decided to take that because I figured that staring at computer screens wasn't for me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And what job did you end up working in?
Admin.
Admin, okay.
Yeah, office admin.
Okay. And you also run a farm as well on top of it?
Yes.
Both of you and your husband?
Got 190 acres and about 200 sheep.
Wow. Oh
at the
my
moment.
gosh.
Yep.
And how are your children liking homeschooling? What's their reaction with it?
Well, yeah, they love it. They, if we ever want to threaten them, if they're being a bit naughty, then we say, "Oh, we'll send you back to school,"
Yeah.
and they knuckle down and get to it.
Yeah, they do the work.
Yeah, they realise that there's 6 hours a day out of their day is too much. They don't want to give up that much time.
Yeah,
because the homeschooling doesn't actually take that long.
Yeah.
With kids that are going to really put their head down and work,
Yeah.
you don't need to spend 6 hours a day learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because school is broken up in like half an hour here, half an hour there, and then they sort of, and it's just all broken, isn't it? It's broken up throughout the day. So do you do your, how much hours a day would you do, and do you do it straight, or do you break it up? How do you sort of set the curriculum for the day?
Well, I kind of let the kids lead in that regard. So we have, well, they're often working when I get out of bed. I'm a bit
They already start without you telling them.
They've already started, yes.
Gee, that's good.
That's rare. I admit that other homeschooling mums don't get that. I'm lucky in that regard. Yeah, so they get out of bed. Sometimes I'll be eating breakfast going, no, it's too early for algebra. I need to eat my breakfast.
Oh, how cute.
But yeah, so they'll go till about lunchtime.
So they just get up in the morning, eat their breakfast, and then just start with whatever subject they want to start with?
Basically, yep.
Oh,
yep.
okay.
We encourage things like maths and English to be done first, particularly maths, because if it gets too far in the morning, they start getting tired, and then they don't do as well
because you've got to
at the
concentrate
mathematics.
more. Yeah. And so with maths, the one that said it's too early for algebra, is that he or she didn't want to start first thing in the morning, they wanted to do it a bit later in the day?
No, that was me saying it's too early for algebra because I'm still eating my breakfast.
And okay, they want you to teach
I don't
them.
do algebra before breakfast. Yeah.
And so, what are their friends like? You know, do they know other children that go to school, or do they talk to other children that go to
They've
school?
got cousins that go to school. They've got extracurricular activities, friends there. So they, it's interesting that we're hearing from these other kids, cousins and others unrelated, through the kids saying that, I wish I could come to your homeschool, wish I could do what you do. At school they're so disorganised, the kids are playing up, the boys muck around, and just a litany of complaints from the kids who are there.
That's amazing. We'll have to talk a little bit more about that. We have to go to a break now. You're watching Nat Chat. Stay with us. We'll be back with more very shortly. Hello and welcome back to Nat Chat. I'm Mirella Rich. Today our guest is Katie Lindorf, if you've just joined us, and we're talking about Catholic homeschooling. She's homeschooling 5 of her children, all of her children. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Now, before the break, we just sort of were talking about other children's interest in homeschooling that aren't being homeschooled. They're talking to your children. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, well, they don't talk to us obviously, but talking to our kids and our kids pass it on, is that they are sick of being put in school and learning nothing. And a cousin of one of my nieces feels that she's being held back by being in school. She'll have a maths sheet because they all get handed out their sheets. She'll finish her maths sheet and then sit around twiddling her thumbs because she has to wait for all the others to catch up.
Yeah.
So she, at least, would love to just be able to go forward at her own pace.
Yeah.
She's said to them, why doesn't the teacher then give me a grade 6 maths sheet rather than a grade 4 or whatever she's in?
Yeah. Well, that's one of my brothers actually was like that at school. He was just like so ahead of everybody else. And I think he might have been about, I can't remember if it was grade 3 or grade 4. And the teachers just put him up. They said, well, I'm sorry, you're too smart for this group. You're too ahead. You'll have to go to the next level. It was kind of good and bad because it was sad because he left his friends, but it was such a small school anyway, so they still played together. But he was just beyond it. So he was just like really cluey. But it would be hard if the children are not being challenged enough and they're not learning as much as they want to learn.
Yes,
sort of.
well, I guess the other benefit with homeschooling is that it's tailored to each child. So you can have a child that's brilliant in maths but struggling with English. So you can put them up a grade in a conventional school, but what if they're struggling with the English?
Yeah.
So a homeschool education is tailored to that child because it's so much easier to keep track of 5 kids than it is 30.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's one teacher with 5 rather than one teacher with 30.
Yep.
It's a bit hard.
And you've got the freedom to, if one of your children is struggling, you can then stop and stay on that topic for as long as needed till they master that concept and then go on.
Yeah. And do you find, it's like I've talked to different homeschool mums and some of them say, I just teach them what they're really interested in learning as well. So like say if they have a passion for say music or they have a passion for geography or passion for maths, they really try and hone in what the children's interested in because that's what they're going to really concentrate on and do well on. Have you heard of that method as well of teaching?
I have. I think balanced because you don't know what they're going to end up doing.
Yeah.
I think extracurricular activities, that's where I work on those things. So, for instance, my kids are quite musical, so I'll send them to a choir or I'll get them, lessons in an instrument or something.
Right.
But otherwise, I just see it as a broad education.
Okay. So you make sure you just include everything like they would at normal school, and then if they're showing a shining interest in something else, you'll maybe do that after that school time, like you're doing with the.
Yep.
So they're learning singing after school. They're in a choir or something, are they?
Yes. Yep. They're part of a choir.
And what does that involve?
Well, that involves weekly rehearsals and then performances, which can really vary. Often it's just the performances for family and friends at the end of each term, but that includes doing solos in front of all of us. Yeah. So that's a big thing. Oh, I've never sung a solo, I wouldn't be brave enough, but they are.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
But they also, last term, they were part of the Carols by Candlelight in St Mary's Basilica in Geelong.
Oh, beautiful.
They were also part of the new Geelong Library opening. So that was, with all VIPs only kind of thing. So that was a big event for them too. So really varied locations, places, events.
Wow.
Which has given them, a really broad, it's not just singing, they get to see so much more.
Yeah. And what about your own experience? Because you've tried both. You've tried conventional school and homeschooling. How do you feel about homeschooling now that you've tried? Well, obviously you must really like it because you've taken it on board and done it with your children as well. But I just want to hear it from your own words, the differences that you found.
Well, I think that homeschooling is vastly superior, primarily because it's the mother, generally the mother, in most cases it's the mother, teaching her own children. And she has that love for her children, so she wants them to do well. A teacher cannot give that love to strangers' children. So she wants her children to go out in the world and do well, so she's she gives up her own career, her own life for her children, to give them that education.
That's a really good point.
That she knows they need, and it's the customisation of it and just the freedom, just to allow them to be kids, but also to, help them to be the very best they can be.
Yeah. And also I've often heard that a lot of children that are homeschooled are able to talk to all ages. They're not just only able to talk to their own age group. They're able to talk to adults and teenagers, all age groups. They don't have this kind of restriction over them. There's no one saying you're only fitting in with this certain type of person.
Well, if you consider how unnatural schools and even right down to playgroups or play centres, daycare centres, how unnatural they are. Like, think of it as an adult in a working environment. How many of your work colleagues are exactly your age? So they're not, contrary to popular belief, they're not being set up in a conventional school. They're not being set up for real life.
Yeah, I've
they're
often
in
heard
an
that
artificial environment of peers only.
Yeah. And also then they've got the problem as well with peer group pressure. Like you see, occasionally you might see teenagers that just seem kind of down or like miserable or something. I don't know why, but it's just that year, it's just that age group. But it's usually the ones that go to school. But the homeschool children that are teenagers are really full of life. They've got a bright smile on their face and a cheerful attitude.
Yep. Yeah. Well, they don't have that pressure on them, I guess, to be macho or be the best dressed or have the fanciest hairdo or the newest phone or any of those things. They don't have that pressure on them, so they can be free to be who they are, to relax and they don't realise that. I mean, they don't think uncool ever.
Yeah, no.
It's just this is my little brother. I'm going to pick him up and cuddle him and do what makes him feel good.
Yeah.
They don't stop
and they don't
and
think if anyone's watching.
No.
They don't care. It's just normal. We have to go to a break now.
Yeah. Okay.
You're watching Nat Chat. Stay with us. We'll be back with more very shortly. Hello and welcome back to Nat Chat. I'm Mirella Rich. If you've just joined us, we're here with Katie Lindorf, who is a homeschool mum. She's Catholic homeschooling 5 of her children, which are all of her children, and she's doing a great job. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Now, just with your curriculum, how do you set out about the curriculum? Do you just teach them what you think they need to know, or how do you structure your program with the children?
I started out basically concentrating on the maths and English, so maths and reading specifically. And once they got beyond that, I was sort of doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then I got to the stage where it was like, well, I'm not really teaching them the social studies, history, geography, and I wasn't quite sure where to go, so I thought I'll just do a full curriculum. So I've put them onto the ACE program, Accelerated Christian Education. And they're learning everything, and I can be secure knowing that I like the safety net, I guess.
Yeah. And then do you correct it afterwards, or do they have is it on computer or is it all through books?
It's books, they're workbooks, and it's an interesting program because they actually correct themselves. However, they do have a final test at the end of each booklet to test their knowledge of what they've learned in that booklet, which I correct, and then that gets sent back to the school that I'm doing it through. So then they actually get report cards and everything at the end of each semester.
Okay, so you send their finished work to the school that's providing all the curriculum?
Yep.
In America, is it?
No, here in Queensland it is.
What's it called again?
Australian Christian Homeschooling is the provider, and Accelerated Christian Education.
Okay, is that in the Sunshine Coast? Or Brisbane?
I can't remember the name of the
actual
suburb.
Area, I have to look into that. Anyway, anyone can Google that.
Yep.
Also, how did you get the confidence to homeschool your own children?
Well, being homeschooled and having a husband who was homeschooled, and it wasn't really a choice.
Nicely mapped out for you. The platter was there. And with homeschooling socialisation, a lot of people have an issue with that. They will say, well, what about the social aspect with homeschooling? What are your thoughts if someone asks you that question?
Well, my first thought is everybody asks this question.
Yeah.
And my second thought is they do extracurricular. They're not locked up at home. They're not kept in cages or anything. They are actually normal children allowed to do normal things. And they do have friends. They do a lot of letter writing to their other homeschooled friends, which is a bit of a lost art these days with email. They see their cousins, they have family functions, it's pretty normal.
Yeah.
They get plenty of social interaction.
Yeah.
They come shopping, they talk to the people.
Yeah. And also I've heard as well, because when a child feels very loved and secure with its own family, they are like that in the world, in society.
Yep.
They're loved and secure, and they're confident to go out into society. So, and that's homeschool. This is from homeschool families,
Yep.
Catholic homeschool families that that I've been speaking to and that I've read up on about, and even non-Catholic homeschool families, people that are homeschooled because the mum loves the child so much they want to teach them.
Yep.
And so then they grow up very secure in themselves, and they're confident naturally with other children.
Yep.
So I think, and they're confident to be themselves, which is a beautiful thing. There's not that peer group pressure that's torn them down and shredded them, or the bullies. The thing we were talking off camera. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? The social aspect, like what are you being socialised into?
Yeah. Well, my husband always likes to say that there's good socialisation and there's bad socialisation. In my homeschool, I don't have to instill an anti-bullying program because it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So not all socialisation is good, and people need to remember that. And I'm sure all of us can remember times back in our school days where we prefer that we weren't there right at that particular time.
Yeah, I remember seeing some things. I remember there was at my school, when I was in primary school, seeing two boys trying to throw this boy off a bridge.
Oh, wow.
And I was only 8 years old. And I was trying to talk. I talked them out of it, and I got another child to run into the school teacher's room and said to grab the teacher, and I'm sort of talking them out of it as I'm sort of negotiating.
Yep.
I'm chief negotiator with them to stop them from dropping. He was like hanging off the bridge, and they're holding him. I'm going, stop.
Yeah.
And I think that's in a Catholic primary school too. So it was even a Catholic school. So it's not necessarily. But then the rest, the school days I had were really beautiful. I did actually like my school days. But there was dramas like that that you would never have at home, that you'd never see at home.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Undoubtedly, there's really good things about conventional school. That you can't deny that.
Yeah.
But the accusations, I think, levelled at homeschooling are not accurate.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk as well. Hopefully you'll come on. Would you come on again next week for a program?
Yeah, sure.
It'd be good to be back, because I wanted to talk about, there's a student actually, he's got the highest score in Australia in VCE, and he's never stepped foot in a school in his life.
Yep.
He was homeschooled, and he was top in Australia. So, there is that side of homeschooling as well. And are there many people just quickly, that are homeschooling their children?
There's people that I know, but I probably don't know of half of the ones that are homeschooled.
There's quite a lot now.
Yes.
And in Melbourne there's quite a lot, like even right in the inner city, like country people are homeschooling. Sometimes they do it because it's a distance away from the school. But now in a city, that it's just booming. There's so many homeschool families, and they run groups, so you all get the social interaction together as well with the mums with the children.
Yep.
And the dads sometimes, if they come.
Yes. Yeah.
How many of your friends would you say were homeschooled now, would you know? Like you, was it very few in those days?
Yes, it wasn't as many. There were sort of core families, but in Melbourne, up country,
you ended up marrying
I did.
your husband who knew you as a child when you were homeschooled.
Yeah, our family sort of took us out of school at the same time. So we kind of homeschooled a little bit together.
Yeah, so we're like childhood sweethearts, I guess.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Teenage
sweethearts.
Teenage sweethearts, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the program, and we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, great. Thanks
Beautiful.
for having me.
Thank you. You've been watching Nat Chat. I hope you enjoyed the program. We'll see you again next week.